If you've got any problems, though. Bye. Bye.
Well, bye. Oh, it feels sad to lose you, Nikki, but thank you for that introduction. And hello, everyone who's with us now and in the future who might be watching this. I'm Jessica Hepburn, and I'm hosting this session on the We Are Worthy Summit. I'm the author of The Pursuit of Motherhood, which is a book about my journey through 11 rounds of unsuccessful IVF. And my new book, 21 Miles Swimming in Search of the Meaning of Motherhood, is out next week. It launches a festival I founded called Fertility Fest, which is the world's first arts festival dedicated to fertility, infertility, modern families, and the science of making babies, which aims to bring the arts and science together to explore the multifaceted subject of fertility and infertility, including involuntary childlessness. Because what I want to do is improve outcomes for everyone, whatever their fertility story. It opens at the Bush Theatre in London on the 8th of May, and you can find out more at www.fertilityfest.com. I'm delighted to be enjoying this afternoon by 3 of the artists who will be appearing in the festival to discuss the subject of creativity and childlessness. We have Chantal Ehrenberg. Give us a wave, Chantal, who will be appearing in an event called Fertility and the Body on the 11th of May. And Rachel Giles. Rachel, give us a wave, who's appearing in an event called Race, Religion and Reproduction on the 11th of May. And finally, Tina Reid, who's appearing in an event called The Unborn Child on the 12th of May, Saturday the 12th of May. So I wonder if I can start, ladies, by asking you one by one to tell me a little bit about your creative work and practice around infertility and fertility, and if you feel you'd like to share a bit of your own fertility story, that would be great too. But whatever you want to say is absolutely fine. So who would like to go first? Any volunteers? Or shall I just choose you?
Pick one.
Well, because you're on a Friday, why don't we go in order of how you're appearing? So why don't we start with you, Chantal?
Great. Well, thanks so much for including me, Jessica, and I'm really happy to be here. And I guess we'll just like a 3 to 5 minute sum up, right? Kind of thing.
I think that'd be perfect.
Yeah, 2 to 3 minutes. Well, in sum, I was diagnosed at 32. I was told I wasn't able to have children, and then I went through 5 years of trying to find out if that was actually the case. And basically now I'm childless by circumstance, but really had something what they called subfertility or early menopause even. And so what happened was about 5 years ago, so that was about 12 years ago that first happened. And then about 5 years ago, I decided I wanted to pursue, it took a long time, but slowly pursue some creative work on that. And I'm a dancer and choreographer, but I'm also a dance studies academic. And my previous research looked at how the mirror and video was self-reflection for dancers and their embodied experiences, which led me to start to investigate ultrasound imagery and women's bodily experience, and also begin to create my own choreography out of that. And what that developed into was a performance lecture that I'll be showing at the Fertility Fest, which is both a summation or a summary of women's experiences of infertility that exists in the literature, mainly sociology and psychology, but also my original choreographic material that comes out of my own experience, and how this material I'm reading gets expressed through my body. I also dance with my ultrasound images, and I dance with ideological imageries of motherhood, like Kate Middleton, which is very prominent at the moment, Beyonce,
baby.
yeah, and some of those, Demi Moore on the cover of Time, those that kind of fed my growing up with these ideological images. And that's something that's evolved over about 6 performances where I performed it, gotten feedback, and developed it. And the one for the Fertility Fest, I'm trying to engage also with a more autobiographical section where I talk about my own experiences as well. So is that...
That's perfect. Thank you so much for sharing that. So I want to ask you more, but let's go now to Rachel, who's also on Friday the 12th of May. So we're going in chronological order now. So Rachel, tell us a bit about your creative practice around this subject.
Okay, so where do I start? Well, I'll just give you a brief bit of background about my own story. So I got married quite late when I was 40, and I kind of assumed that I would be able to have children. My sister had her babies quite late at 40 and 42, and I just thought I would do, but it didn't turn out that way. And I was told I had, after trying and not succeeding in having children, doing all the tests and stuff, I was told I had critically low AMH, which meant that, my eggs just weren't in particularly good shape. And at that point, I decided not to have treatment. I was offered egg donation, but for me, that wasn't the right course, because a biological link was quite important for me. So, I mean, overall, I think that journey took about, from starting to think about having kids, probably from the age of 35, it probably occupied about 8 years. And it sort of started coming to the end when I decided to spend the money that we had put aside for potential treatment on going back to college. So I went to Birkbeck, and I did an MA in history of art. My background's in working for museums and galleries. I'm a project manager, and I'm now a freelance writer and editor. So I'm very interested in visual art. And because I've worked with words for so long, being a writer and editor, I just wanted to sort of get more into the visual and actually look at this whole subject visually. So I did my master's research on visual representations of infertility and childlessness, so contemporary artists, 2 of which have already appeared at Fertility Fest. That's Tabitha Moses, Louise Ann Wilson, and the 3rd one was Alina Brotherus, who's an amazing photographer. So I did my master's on that, absolutely loved it. And then following that, that was in 2016, I completed my master's. I got offered a research residency with a very interesting organisation called the Centre for Substructured Loss, which is Canadian applied grief and bereavement research body. So I got the chance to work with 2 visual artists in Stockwell in some studios. And my original idea was to just kind of put together a proposal for an exhibition, what would an exhibition look like, visual art, around this subject. But they said to me, well, why don't you make some art? And I was like, what? I write about art. I don't make it, but I thought I'll give it a go. And we had a show coming up. So they said, work in a medium that you feel comfortable in. For me, because I make books, I've worked in publishing for about 20 years, I thought I'll make a book. So I did a bookbinding project called No Conception, which was about my own kind of journey of realization of starting at the age of 19 and working with one photograph of myself at the age of 19, where I actually had no conception of my own fertility, of time, of the biological clock, and of where I would end up. And I integrated that with some of scans of my own body, which came out of the whole research treatment process. So some HSG scans, and so they're actual.
I don't know what an HSG is.
Hysterosalpinogram.
Oh right, okay, yeah.
So it's the one where they squirt dye into you.
Squirt the dye into your tubes, yeah.
Right. See if you've got any.
We all have that.
holes
We
in
all
your
have the
tube.
dye in our tubes. I think we probably do.
And I requested those after I knew I wouldn't have children. I wanted them back from the hospital because there's something amazing about seeing inside your body. So this whole book project was picture of me from 19, pictures of me and my scans, which I actually thought were very beautiful, even though it was a sort of picture of failure. And then on the reverse of this highly engineered book are pictures of me now, sort of in acceptance of childlessness. So me with my husband, my stepchildren, me getting kind of, well, actually there's a nude picture of me as well. So it's interesting about this sort of thing about getting back in touch with your own body after childlessness. So that, I hope that's not too rambling, but that's kind of...
No, that's beautiful.
Yeah,
I just got distracted by a little comment, which I think has come in from Nikki, which says, dye in our tubes. I think that's referring to Andrew, who's her husband, is squirming on the other side of the desk. Yes.
I was squirming too.
And I've just unmuted myself as well. Sorry to interrupt. One check that we forgot to do, which I'd like to do quickly now because it does save us a step later on.
Yeah.
If I could ask all four of you, over on the bottom left-hand side of your screen where you get the little microphone symbol,
Yeah.
there is the up arrow. If you could press the up arrow at the moment and go to audio options.
Audio options, yeah.
Please, yeah. On this screen, please do not leave computer audio.
Yeah.
Please click onto the test computer mic and speakers. Yeah. And about halfway through that window, there is an area where it says automatically adjust the microphone. If there is a tick in that box.
No, it's not letting me test computer mic and speaker. Hang on.
And it. Does anybody be able to do it?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, so Jessica's done it, Chantal's done it. Tina, have you managed to?
No.
Oh, not quite sure how I can do that. Are you getting anything? Can you click the up arrow at all?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm on the thing which says leave computer audio and test computer mic.
Yeah. So Tina, can you click onto the test computer and mic and speakers? Yeah.
It doesn't work.
And that doesn't work.
I'm on a Mac. I don't know if that's why it's...
That might be
I'm
it.
on a Mac as well.
Yeah, there you go.
You learn something new every day. Yes, I love Macs, but they haven't worked this time. What we will try and do then is we will try and even out the volume of the recording for people, because sometimes your volume's getting a bit lower and higher and stuff. Yeah.
So what, for those of us who can click onto the screen, what should we do?
You want to take the tick out of the box which says automatic.
Oh, right, okay, fine.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got automatically join audio by computer when joining a meeting.
Yeah, I've got that too.
Do you get the audio box behind that window though?
Hang
That
on.
gives you the settings.
Yes. Yes. Sorry. Now, what did you want us to do on that?
Settings, I haven't got anything else.
We've got...
On the microphone is where she's indicating.
Right, okay. What do we need to do there?
Test speaker.
On click
Underneath.
automatically adjust microphone settings one.
Yeah, I've got that.
There's a bit where it says automatic adjust microphone. Make sure there isn't a tick in the box.
Oh, I've just unticked it.
Automatically.
Yeah, it's done.
I don't know what you're... I don't know. Sorry.
There, behind that box that we were looking at, there's
Yeah,
a grey box. Do you
Yeah.
see that, with test speaker built-in output.
Yeah,
And then if you look at the bottom half of that,
yeah.
they're under test mic, input level, and then input volume. There's a little checkbox which says automatically adjust microphone status.
Oh, yeah, that's checked.
So uncheck that.
Uncheck it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got it?
Yep.
Yeah, and then you can close those windows. Thank you very much for talking us through that, Rachel, because of course I see a different screen.
Yeah, that's all right. Thanks.
Thank you, Rachel. Right, any more problems? Rachel's in charge. That's right, we're back. So thank you to Chantal and Rachel, who just gave us a little introduction to their work and story. And now can I turn to Tina, who's in chronological order, as I said, who's going to be at the festival on Saturday the 12th. Over to you, Tina.
Okay, hello. I'm delighted to be here. A little bit about my story. I don't really feel comfortable to say too much, but
you say whatever you like.
Yeah. I suppose I started trying to have a baby very late. It was just before I was 40. I had a long-term relationship which had ended, and then I sort of struggled for a while. Lost a lot of confidence in forming relationships. So when I got to about near to 40, I was quite depressed because at that point, because I thought I wasn't going to have children. I thought my last chance to have children had gone. And I went to the doctor and they suggested I had IVF, which I'd never thought about. And so I did it as a single woman, which meant using donor sperm. So I had quite a problem with that, with the idea of not knowing who the father would be, what they would be like, what I would tell the child, if the child would be able to cope with it, whether they would have trouble at school. I sort of thought through the whole process, and anyway, I went ahead with it, and had several attempts as a single woman, which was quite hard. And I did have a pregnancy, but I had a miscarriage. And then when I got to about 46, they told me they wouldn't do it anymore because I was now at an age where I had to now have donor egg. And I thought, I'm not having donor egg and donor sperm, I'd rather adopt. But of course, I'd already had to make the choice of adoption or IVF because at 40, because you can't do both. You can't do both at the same time. And at that age, I had to decide which one to do. So I went down the path of IVF. So at 46, I decided that was the end, and I'd have to finish it, in the process as well, I'd also given up my job because while that was happening, I'd given up my job and I'd bought a derelict house, which I'd done up and made so that I would get an income and be independent so that I would be able to have a child on my own and look after it. So what I found at 46 was that I was independent. I didn't have to do my job, which was great, but I had no meaning. It felt like I had no meaning. I'd lost all sense of my meaning in life, which is a terrible thing to say as a feminist, because I am a feminist and I believe in feminist ideals. But I did find that not being able to have children, I did wonder what my meaning was, and I have to say that that is what happened. So that's when I actually then met my husband and got pregnant by accident, not expecting to, and had another miscarriage. So then my husband helped me. Well, what I've missed out is that at that point at 46, I decided, well, I'm single, I have no responsibilities, no children, and I have independent means. I'm going to do what's really good about that, which is I'm going to travel, I'm going to buy a sports car, and just go around the world and have a great time. So I did a really long sort of trip in South America and came back, and then I met my husband. And then I started to get into photography, and I returned to art, which is what is my main talent. and so that was my route out of the feeling that I had no meaning. So I returned to art, and my first, well, I used to be a sculptor, but I returned and started something new, which was photography. And my first project was I decided to make it about my situation. And so I came up with a project called Photos I'll Never Take, which was about creating a family album, a family album that I'll never have. So I got hold of a mannequin, which was supposedly 2 years old, but had strange proportions, and also a make-believe child, a baby, and also a fetus from an anatomical model. And I used those as to create the story. And my husband is very, very patient and understanding. He even took part in it and helped me take the photographs. So he's in some of the photographs, which I think was very embarrassing for him. And it was embarrassing for him to have me going around in public with a fake child, pretending it was real. And it was embarrassing for me. But it was also really good fun as well. We had a really great time doing it. And it was also a bit therapeutic, because I was able to go to car boot sales and buy baby clothes. It was awful. I actually really enjoyed it.
Yeah. I think that's right. Well, I mean, and I wanted to talk about this a bit more, but your work is so profoundly moving. And I just want to say to anyone who's joining us or watching in the future that we will put all the artists' sort of website addresses where they have them, so that you can look at the work in more detail, at your leisure. I just want to pick up on that thing that you just said and ask everyone about. You said it was. You did say that it was embarrassing but also fun, but you used the word therapeutic. And it's something that I get asked a lot about my writing, has it been a therapeutic process? And I wanted to ask each of you whether the creation of the work that you're going to be talking about at the festival and that you've made, has it been a therapeutic process for you? What about you, Chantal?
Yeah, it's funny because I was watching some of the other talks and also just looking at the We Are Worthy Summit.
Yeah.
And have thought about this a few times, because I've had other friends and colleagues, Brian Lobel, for instance, who's done work on his experience of cancer, and has also talked about how his making of the work wasn't therapeutic for him, really.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it's still unsure.
Right.
Whether there is some sort of therapeutic side to this process of making the work, sharing it, coming to terms with it. This is the first time I've talked publicly about my situation.
Yeah.
But it's not.
I know that's been a really big thing this moment. So I really just want to. I'm here for you in cyberspace, like knowing that that's a big thing you've just done, Chantal.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I can, anyway, but on reflection of thinking of today, at the moment, it's just that I don't feel like the making of the work it doesn't feel like the kind of therapeutic processes I've been through in the past.
Yeah.
It's so difficult to come to the work sometimes.
Yeah.
And also there's this whole element of it being part of my work.
Yeah.
That it's part of my, my persona at the university.
Yeah.
It's a part of, part of my work life as well as my personal. So it's.
I want to connect those two. What would you say, Rachel? How have you felt? Because you sort of came to it in a different way in terms of like studying to begin with other people's work, and then went to make your own work.
It's a really, really interesting question, that about therapy, because like Chantal says, the actual process doesn't feel like any kind of therapy I've ever had. I suppose it's about communicating something that may not have been communicated before in any way or form. And for me, it was really important to kind of get my story straight in my own head, because it wasn't straight. And I was a bit, when I was studying it, I was looking at narratives, and particularly illness narratives. And there's a writer called Arthur Frank who wrote a really interesting book called The Wounded Storyteller, which is all about illness narratives and how it's important that people who are ill, for example, suffering from cancer, are given a voice. And I was thinking, yeah, it's really important for childless women to have a voice. But I found I was fed up of words being a writer. I just felt that my narratives were falling into sort of standard narratives, and I wanted to escape that. So it might have been a kind of release into the visual for me that was healing. I think there's definitely a healing of sorts, but it's not like a single act. So for me, I think it was just like getting all of the letters and getting all of the timeline, and looking at the last sort of 8 years of my life, and being really pragmatic. And this is just because this is probably my personality, but like really logical, and looking at it and saying, well, this happened, then that happened, then that happened. I still can't make much sense of it. And that's all right. So what came out of it, maybe that was good for me to do that, but I don't want to do that process again. I've done it now. So it's a sort of ongoing process that might lead to other things. So when I showed someone the finished work, which was like you were saying, Tina, it's a lot of fun making stuff, you know, and it gives you meaning and purpose and joy, actually, making things. And that creative side is something that gets so lost when you're going through investigations and you know, testing. So to rediscover that was really joyful. But somebody did ask me when they saw this book I'd made, oh, well, do you feel better now? And I was like, well, no, but I feel different.
Yeah.
So there's something transformative. That was a very long answer, but
no. I mean, it's making me think about my own practices. It's brilliant. So Tina, you used the words fun, embarrassing, and therapeutic.
Yes. Okay.
So what was the balance? Because I think anyone listening to the work that you create, they would really understand the embarrassing. You know, you're taking a mannequin, exactly as you say, and pretending it's your child, and people are going to look at you from the outside and think you're a mad woman, aren't they? And I think you speak. I want you to talk a little bit more about that. But so, where was the balance between embarrassing, fun? But I can also see the fun, because there's a beautiful video that you do, which hopefully other people will be able to watch, which is when you've got the mannequin and you're doing the tobogganing, you know, in the snow, and the toboggan won't go down the hill, and you can just see you and your husband laughing about this whole scene. So I've experienced the fun, and I think people will see that. And then there's the therapy. Where is the balance of the three for you?
Well, actually, I mean, when I say therapeutic, there was a therapeutic element, but I would never have been able to do the project if I hadn't already come some way towards acceptance, because it was such a difficult thing to visit those feelings. And there were times when it did make me sad, but it was because I'd already had proper therapy, you know, and had counselling and sort of dealt with it. But I was sort of just in the last stages of it. So, it did help me to just finish it, you know. So now I've got acceptance. I'll always have sadness at times, and, you know, feel the loss. But at the time, it did help me to finish those, you know, finish it off, really. I don't know there's probably a term for it and I can't remember what it is. But as far as
closure, is that the term?
Closure, that's it. Closure. I was going to say something else. Yes, the other thing about the balance, and what the other two have said, I mean, there was a lot about communication as well.
Yeah.
The reason I did the project was to communicate the pain and the feeling and the loss, because I felt that quite often people didn't understand. I mean, obviously people did, but there was some not, you know, sometimes there wasn't. And also, you know, it's not a complete understanding, because people think, oh, you can adopt, or you can do this, or you can do that, and it's solvable. And you know, that was my last option, and you know, and so it wasn't solvable. And so I kind of wanted to show that how difficult it is, like how Christmas is like one of the worst times of the year, although now, you know, I'm fine, but you know, how, you know, all that sort of thing. So it was about communication, and what I felt was that the child that I was carrying around was a symbol for this silent pain. That's how it was, even though it was actually a child, a fake child.
Absolutely. No, and actually, I mean, you've all led me beautifully onto the question I was going to ask about this sort of the therapeutic process, which is this: what are we trying to say to the world about this condition of involuntary childlessness? And I wonder if I can turn to you, Rachel, because you sort of brought that up first in a way, because you're doing the session Race, Religion and Reproduction, and I know that you're particularly going to talk about the work in relation to your own faith, and I wonder whether you could just say a little bit about what you feel needs to be communicated around that.
Well, without going into my talk too much, I suppose in a nutshell, my own experience of my faith has been that what you're just saying earlier about lack of understanding. I think there are people who do understand in faith communities, but I think there are other levels of misunderstanding which add massive layers of complexity to the whole experience of involuntary childlessness or infertility, and that can make things even more difficult. And I mean, part of the other bit of the work that I did as part of the research residency was to make some inspirational posters, because some of the things that get said to you in churches, from my own experience, has been that, you know, take some of the awkward things that people say to you if you're childless and just magnify it by 50. Sometimes, you know, like, you know, you've just got to pray harder, or you know, God's got a plan for your life, and it's part of God's plan that you don't have children. And where a church community, where it's functioning in a healthy way, should be a place where people can feel like they've got some a place, a refuge. You know, it should be a place where people feel that they belong in a non-biological family community. Just sometimes it feels even more
isolating,
child-centric, family orientated, and a very, very difficult place to be. And partly that's just misunderstanding, I think. Partly I think churches are very pro-natalist places, and there are reasons for that. And I just think a lot of the time, and it's quite taboo subject in churches as well, from my own experience. But that's not saying they're all bad. I mean, there are some brilliant people in church communities.
I think, and then there are several artists across different sessions in the festival that I know are sort of talking around this particular subject. So, and can I turn to you, Chantal, just on the communication, because I think, unlike Rachel and Tina, you're sort of still very much in the middle of your project. And it feels to me, and are you, so you're sort of maybe still working out what it is you might want to communicate to the world in the sort of long term about your work? I mean, where are you in the process of what you really want to tell people through it, Chantal?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, I mean, my main question and interest is the way that, because of my experience on looking at the body and how the body makes, you know, the relationship to the meaning in our lives and our relationships to our bodies, because as a dancer and a dance studies academic, is the relationship through infertility or fertility related issues that you come to with your body. And so one of the things I'm engaging with this question is how those ultrasound images, for instance, serve a kind of self-reflective purpose at the point at which you have to renegotiate this whole identity crisis of who you are as a woman related to your body, which really butts up against some feminist principles that I grew up with, like Tina was saying. You know, I'm that I can do anything, and I can, I have full choice. And then I'm in a doctor's office, and there's an ultrasound with a vaginal probe, and they're saying, look here at these black and white blurry images where you don't have the follicle count, your follicles aren't, and that's this external image, but it's my internal body, and I have the feeling and the emotional experience of my body, and trying to bring some articulation of that experience through movement and performance and imagery, but also trying to eventually start to bring in more women's voices and experiences. And that's where I haven't been able to go yet, but I would really like to do, because not all of us, like we've all said, it's taken a long time for us to make this work. Well, it has me. It took me, a long time to come to terms to even think about it. So there might be people that want to engage creatively but don't have the means to, and want their voice to be heard but don't want to go through a sort of making their own blog or writing their own book.
Yeah. Actually, that's leads very much into sort of the last question that I'd like to ask you, because there may be people watching who are interested because they are wanting to make their own work, either because they're professional artists and they might never have made work around this subject before, and might sort of be afraid of tackling it, or they are not practicing artists but are wanting to sort of find a sort of creative outlet for what they're going through. What advice would you all give to someone who might be thinking that? What would you say, Tina?
Well, I think it's just to start. For me, I had no idea how I was going to even attempt to communicate anything about it. But I remembered a photo I took when my aunt died at her funeral, where we were sitting in her living room, and she had a doll in the middle of the room, which was sort of life size of child. And I was really struck by that as the sort of elephant in the room, the child she never had. And I took a photo. So I just used that as my starting point and decided that I was going to recreate the photo, and then that just led to the project. But I think it's just start. It doesn't matter that you haven't got an idea. The thing is just to start, and then it will take you somewhere.
Brilliant. And what about you, Rachel? What would you?
Yeah, I would say the same. I mean, I wouldn't force yourself to do something if you're not feeling it. And you will know when the right time is. Like, it's difficult to write about your experiences until there is this distance, for example. And it might be the same with making other forms of creative work. But I think it's been hugely beneficial to me. And I wouldn't worry about it being perfect or brilliant, or, you don't have to go to art school. I mean, it's there for everybody. And I think what's really important is that our culture, as Chantal was saying, has more diversity of stories and experiences, and particularly from childless women who have been, marginalised. But the more that people make forms of art in different ways that suit them, whether it's visual, written, forms of dance or music, absolutely the better, and the richer our culture will be for it, and the less alone other childless women are going to feel. So I think it's a really important thing to do, actually.
Yeah. And I mean, and I would say just, and then I'll turn to you, Chantal, to get your thoughts on that. But you know, I just think with the Fertility Fest, we've got over 100 artists now involved in the festival at all stages and of the fertility journey, with all sorts of different outcomes, or you know, future outcomes. And I think, you know, absolutely, really, the body of work is also making the sort of public dialogue, you know, it's impacting on it. So Chantal, what would you say? Have you got any sort of words of advice?
Well, I agree completely with what Tina Rachel said, is do it on your own terms. You know, if you don't feel, you know, take your time. I mean, I really went into it slow. I never put my own voice, my own story in until I was ready, and I'm still doing that slowly. But I feel like having people around me. So Jessica, meeting you early on was really useful. So I'm very grateful for that. And I have another friend and colleague who...
Thank you for your lovely tweet, Chantal. Anyway, sorry, Karen.
But I have other colleagues that make very personal work, like my friend and colleague Catherine Long. And so having this kind of support, it's not support group, it's a creative team around you, that you can that keep you, you know, that you can bounce ideas off of. And
yeah, well, I mean, I feel exactly the same. And actually, I have to say that I've never done anything like this before, like done a live, I mean, I've done webinars one-on-one with people, but I've never sort of hosted a live session like this. So this is virgin territory, and it's been amazing. And like, whenever I'm talking to all of you, you know, I just can't believe that I would say this, because we all have come to making work out of a lot of pain, you know, but that it feels such a privilege to be able to have these, you know, really brilliant, thought-provoking, intelligent discussions with other wonderful women, and it's really great. So I think we're gonna nearly finish. I'm just gonna ask Nikki, if you're there, do we have any sort of final questions for anyone? I can see that there's something written up on my screen, but for some reason I can't quite read it at the moment.
Yeah, I thought, rather than having just a sort of an anonymous face or a little black sign saying that I had no video, that I'd actually take this opportunity to come back on video as well, because it's a bit less impersonal. I do have one comment, which was about something that Tina said fairly near the beginning, actually, and it's about Tina. I can relate so much to your message of searching for meaning. I've been through the same challenge. Viktor Frankl's book on man's search for meaning shaped my personal life and my current work immensely. I think that searching for meaning is so common in society, even when we get everything that we want, such as a house, partner, children, etc. So it wasn't a question or anything, it was just expressing a point of view.
Oh, that's very nice, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Whoever, if you're still listening, whoever sent that comment, thank you very much for contributing. So we're going to say over now, I just want to say a final couple of thank yous. I want to say thank you to all my lovely Fertility Fest artists for joining us. I also want to say thank you to Nikki for organising this We Are Worthy Summit. This is the first year. It's an incredible undertaking done for the childless community. I do not underestimate how much work has been involved, and I want to thank you. And I also have a final thank you, because I'm going to be a good chair, and I'm going to say that I would like to thank the summit sponsors, because without their support and generosity, this summit would not be possible. And you can.
And who are they?
And you, well, maybe Nikki will jump in. But I was also going to say you can find details of the summit sponsors on the homepage of the website. So maybe there, or do you want to list them, Nikki?
Well, it's difficult. I'd need to have a sheet of paper, because I don't really think that I can mention some people and then not mention other people.
Yeah,
because I think that's unfair. But the people who are watching live, all of the summit sponsors are on the homepage of the website, and then when it's recorded, there's a little sort of slide which gets inserted here, because otherwise I think it's a bit unfair. But what I would like to say in return is thank you so much, Jessica, for taking time to do this when I know that you are so busy with Fertility Fest. And also, you know, I'm so honoured that you, and also Chantal, I think it was, you said, you know, this is the first time that you've actually started speaking out about these things. So I feel very honoured and blessed that you have decided to do that here. And also to Rachel and Tina as well for bearing with us when we had our technical issues and things like that, because doing something like this for the first time is very daunting, and it's just brilliant that you've stuck with it and you've gone, yeah, okay, I'm going to do this. So thank you very much to all of you. And it's been fascinating listening to all of you talk about creativity in different ways. I'm a writer. I've always been a writer. Picking up a paintbrush, I think, actually scares me a tiny bit. So it's something that I don't do. And I think a lot of it is about finding what you feel comfortable doing and then exploring that. And it's all of value. And it all helps us as well, you know, which is brilliant.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. Have a lovely evening or a day wherever you are in the world.
Thank you.